All right, so continuing from yesterday we introduced slope-intercept form. We talked about, and this is just a little bit of a review, we talked about with slope-intercept form, it was y equals mx plus b, okay? Y equals mx plus b, that is what slope-intercept form is. And we talked about the m is the slope, and the y, or the b, sorry, the b is the y-intercept. Okay, this is review from yesterday. And we learned how to maneuver or move things around in an equation to put it in y equals mx plus b. So it's not always going to be given to you in y equals mx plus b. Sometimes you've got to move stuff around to get it there. All right, so these first four are just review from yesterday. So we are going, now notice what the instructions say. It says solve for y and, in all caps, and state the slope and state the y-intercept. So the first thing we need to do is we need to solve for y. So for number one, Bryce, what would I do first to solve for y? Yep, subtract that 1x and subtract that 1x, and you can put the 1 or not. It doesn't matter. It's there, so it's, and you'll need it here in a minute. So, all right, so we do that, and we get y equals, which one am I going to write first over here? Yep, so minus 1x, and then what's next? Minus 5. Okay, now y is by itself. So now the first half of it that was solved for y is done, right? So Gabby, now the next part of it says state the slope and state the y-intercept. What letter am I going to use to represent the slope? So I put m equals what? Good, -1. And Corbin, what letter am I going to use for the y-intercept? B, and what's b equal here? -5. Good. So I have solved for y, and I have stated the slope and the y-intercept. All right. Let's look at this one. Montana, what am I going to move first? Keep in mind, my goal is to solve for y, which means the x needs to go over, and then I need to divide by 3. So what do I need to move first? Good. I'm going to subtract 4x and subtract 4x, and that gives me -3y equals, and then since I want it in mx plus b, I always write the x value first. So, hey, don't flip over and get ahead of me on the graphing, okay? Hang on to me on that. -4x plus 0. All right, Corbin, what's next? All three separately, right? Remember, that's really important that you do all three separately. And so we get y equals negative and a negative goes positive. So 4/3 x. And then what's 0 divided by -3? Okay. So let's see. Bryce, what variable or what letter am I going to use to represent the slope? Not the x, remember, just the number. But what am I going to write something equals? What letter? M. M equals 4/3. Remember, it's not the x, it's just the numbers. And then Montana, what does the y-intercept or the b equal? 0. Good. All right. Let's see. Gabby, what is now 3? It's not in any form that you would ever recognize. It doesn't matter. You still just start moving things where they go. So Gabby, what is the first thing you would move in number 3? The what? Okay, so how am I going to move that? Okay, make sure you guys follow along on this one. I want to make sure you get the right answer here because this isn't something you've seen before. Not that you can't do it, just check yourself and make sure you did it right. All right, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. That gives me 2y minus x equals 0 plus 4 is 4. All right, Corbin, what would you do next? Good. Add x to both sides. So that gives me 2y. Which one would I write first? Okay. Now, Bryce, what would I do? I got to get y by itself. And I'm going to divide all three terms individually by 2. And this is when I really want to make sure you see this, because this is a common mistake. So we've divided everything by 2, right? I get y here. What do I write for my m? What do you guys think? 1 over 2. You have to remember that in front of that x is a 1. And so I want a number, that's a 1 right there. I want a number in front of that x, and that number most of the time is a fraction, and that's okay. So you got to think about what is your fraction. You've got to remember there's a 1 behind that x. So it's 1 over 2x. And then what's 4 divided by 2? Plus 2. Good. All right, Montana, what is the slope on this one? Excellent. M equals 1/2. And Gabby, what's my y-intercept here? B equals 2. Good. Very good. So even if it's given to you in some crazy form where there's stuff all over the place, it doesn't matter. Just one at a time, very methodically move what you need to move. All right, Corbin, I'm going to let you take it away on number 4. Tell me what to do. Okay, if I add 6x, it's going to move it over here. Do I want the x over on the left? This one's kind of weird. It's a tricky one because everything's over on the right. Remember, I'm trying to get to this. So I want my x on the right, and I want my number on the right. What don't I want on the right? Good. Good. I'm going to subtract 5y from both sides. And the reason is because I need that y on the left. So when I do that, that gives me negative 5y on this side. Now, I've got on the right-hand side right now, I've got a plus 25 and a negative 6x. Which one should I write first? Negative 6x and then plus 25, because I want everything in the right order. And then what? All the way across, right? And that gives me y equals negative and a negative goes positive here. So there's my number in front of my x, then my x, and then plus 25 divided by negative 5 is negative 5. All right. Gabby, what's my slope? Tell me what to write, though. Good. M equals 6 over 5. And Bryce, what's my y-intercept? Almost. Positive or negative? Right? And what would I write to answer it? Not y. Good. B equals negative 5. Great. Okay, so that was a review from yesterday. So now we're going to get into graphing. All right, so let me rewrite my y equals mx plus b. And we already know the m is the slope and the b is the y-intercept. So just the kind of a little memory trick. If you think B is for begin, that's where you begin to graph. So I want you to write this down in your notes. B is for begin, whoops, and M is for move. Okay, so everybody got that down in your notes? Y equals mx plus b. The B is where you begin. The M is how you move. Okay? So the instructions say sketch the graph of each line. If it is already in y equals mx plus b, you can skip that step. So when I like to write steps out here, so I'm going to write a few steps out here for you, and I want you to put these in your notes somewhere, okay? The steps to graph. Okay, steps to graph. Step 1 is you're going to get into y equals mx plus b. That's step 1. So that might take a little bit of algebra. That might take a little bit of moving and grooving, okay? But you're going to get your equation into y equals mx plus b. Step 2 is you're going to graph your b. Remember, that's where you begin. And step 3, you're going to move with your slope. And then step 4 is you're going to actually draw your line. And I'll wait a minute to make sure you guys get those 4 steps down written in your notes, because you'll follow these steps every single time. You got them, Bryce? You got all the steps written down? Okay. Got it, Gabby? All right. So let's look at our first example, keeping in mind our steps that we just talked about. So the first step is get it in y equals mx plus b. It's already there, right? It's in y equals a number and then x plus a number. So it's really helpful, I think, if you will, out to the side, just write out what's your slope. My slope here is negative 1/5, and my b is positive 2. That just kind of helps you filter out the information that you need. B is where you begin, and that is your y-intercept. And remember, this is your y-axis. So on the y-axis, you put a point at positive 2, right on the y-axis. Then you use your slope, and the move is negative 1, 5. So instead of rising, you're going to fall 1. But I'm going to fall 1 and then run to the right, or I'm sorry, yeah, to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to put a point here. Now, I want to ask you, yes?
That's why I get confused on the bottom part when you have to run. Like, which way is that?
Okay, so that's what I'm getting ready to say. So a positive run is always to the right. Think about how you read, right? You always read this way. That's the right way to read. So when you're moving right or moving positive, you're moving right, okay? So you'll notice I had negative 1 over 5. So my negative move was a negative 1, which means I fell 1. And then I ran a positive or to the right 5. Now, I want to ask you guys something. Is 1 over negative 5 the same as negative 1 over 5? Does it matter if the negative's in the top or the bottom? As long as it's not in both, right? If it was negative over negative, that would change it to a positive. But if the negative is still only in one spot, now my 1 is positive, so I would rise 1. And then, Gabby, I hope this answers your question. Now my negative is on the 5, and I'm going to run backwards 5. So I'm going to rise 1 and then run backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's going to put a point here. But notice it doesn't matter because those are all on the same line. So if I draw a line now connecting all that, let's do a line. Well, that was really off, wasn't it? Will it let me move it? I don't know if it'll let me move it. There we go. It'll let me move it. I got to fix that. That's way off. Didn't it? There we go. All right. There we go. That's better. All right. Now, if you'll notice, it didn't matter if I fell 1 and went positive 5, or if I rose 1 and went negative 5, as long as one of my moves was a negative and one of my moves was a positive, I'm still on that line. And if my graph were bigger, I could go over here to this point right here, and I could fall another one and then run another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And guess what? I would still be on. I'd still be on. You can see I'd still be on that line. I could do that forever. I could fall 1, run 5, fall, run 1, 5, or I could raise 1 and back 5, raise 1 and back 5. I could do that forever, and I'm always going to be on my line. Okay? And the reason is because linear equations have a slope that is consistent. So it's always going to rise and fall at the same rate. All right? Okay. So let's look at this one. Now, is it already in y equals mx plus b? It is, right? It's kind of hidden in there. But what's my m? Yeah, 1 over 1. Remember how I said there's a lot of hidden numbers in math? Mathematicians are lazy and they don't write all the numbers they can. Behind every variable is a 1, and under every number is a 1. So I can turn any number into a fraction. Your slope always has to be a fraction because it has to be rise over run. Now, you can write it like this, and that's fine. But when you go to graph it, you have to remember that your slope is 1 over 1. And that's why I said sometimes it's helpful to write this stuff out to the side because it kind of helps you mentally pull apart what you need. Yes, sir?
So the slope will always be a fraction,
Yes.
and the b will always be a whole number.
In my class, yes, you can have fractions, but they're really hard to graph, and you can't graph them with the naked eye, and you can't be exact. So in my class and in iStep and on Khan Academy, they should always be. I can't swear to Khan Academy. Sometimes they get a little wonky, but I'll always make sure your b is a whole number. It doesn't have to be, but it makes it easier to graph. Okay? So what's my b here? Montana, what's my b in this equation? Positive or negative? Okay, remember signs matter, so you've got to make sure you get that negative with it. All right, so you always begin with your b. Remember, b begin. And my y-intercept at -3 is down here. So that's my beginning point. And then I use my m to go +1, +1. So I rise +1, and then I go to the right +1. And remember, right, you can do that forever if you want. Gabby, you want to flip back over and stay with us, please? That would be really helpful. Thanks. I know y'all are excited to get going, but I want you to make sure that what you have is right, and I don't think yours is. This isn't homework. I don't want you guys working ahead on this. The only reason I gave you this printout was so you didn't have to worry about drawing your graphs in your notes. So do it like you would normal notes, which is stick with me, okay? All right, so from my beginning point, I rose 1 and I ran 1. Remember that with slope, you can do that forever. I can rise 1 and run 1 again. I can rise 1 and run 1 again. Now, I want to ask you something, and I'm not trying to confuse you, but sometimes you'll run out of graph, and so I want to help you here. +1 over +1, is that the same as -1 over -1? Because two negatives make a positive, right? So not only can I go up 1 and to the right 1, but I can fall 1 and go backwards 1, and I'm on that same point. I'm on that same line. And I can do that forever. Fall 1, go backwards 1, and you'll notice they're all lined up because they're all part of that same linear equation. Okay? All right, now I'll flip over to the back. Now, this one, is it in y equals mx plus b? All right, so let's see. Montana, what's the first thing you would move? Good. I'm going to subtract, whoops. I'm going to subtract 1x and subtract 1x. And that leaves me with -4y equals, what am I going to write on the other side of the equation, Montana? Nope. The 4 and the x aren't like terms. I can't combine them. I just have to write them in the right order. Which one would I write first? +4, right? I can't combine those two because they're not alike. Now, Bryce, what would I do next? Divide everything by just the -4, right? Because I want to leave that y there. Now, what's my slope here? What would I write? I've got -1 over -4. What do you think? Yeah, it goes positive, and then my x, and then I've got positive 4 divided by negative 4. What's that? Negative 1. Yep, negative 1, because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. All right, Gabby, what is my m here? Yeah, but clean it up a little bit. Instead of 2 negatives, what would you write? No, that changes it. If instead of 2 negatives, why don't I just write it positive? Okay. And then Corbin, what's my b? Okay. So my beginning point is negative 1 because that's my b. And remember, negative 1 is below. That's that negative 1 on the y-intercept. And then my slope is to rise positive 1 and run to the right 4. So up, whoops. There we go. I'm going to go up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And so my slope puts my second point right there. Now, how many points do I need to graph a line? 2. I only need 2. So there's my line. And I don't know why. I don't know if you guys have ever tried it, but Cami will not let you draw a straight line. It's a little warbly, but that's okay. All right. Let's see. Gabby on number 8. What's my first move? Okay, subtract 2x and subtract 2x. And that leaves me with y equals, what would I write on the right side? Good, negative 2x minus 1. Anything I need to divide off? Nope, so I'm in y equals mx plus b, right? Bryce, what's my m? Yep, and if I want to be real specific, because I need it as a fraction to rise and run. Yep, now keep in mind, if I want everybody to notice this, up here in this part of the equation, I don't have to write it as a fraction. I just have to know it's over 1 when I go to use it as my m, okay? And then Montana, what's my b? Negative 1, all right? So Corbin, where am I going to start? Right, on my y-axis, put a point right at the negative 1. And then I'm going to use my m to move negative 2, 1. So that means I'm going to drop 2 and then go positive 1, right? My negative is a negative drop, and then my run is a positive run. Now, here's a big, I want everybody to look up at the screen right now because I'm going to show you. I'm going to do it in green, so this is not what you want to do. This is a big common mistake. When people see negative 2 over 1, they drop 2, and then they also go backwards 1. That's a negative negative. We just, that just made our slope positive. We don't want that. Because if your slope is negative, let's connect the red and the blue because those are the right ones, right? If my slope is negative, we learned this earlier in the year, my line should be running downhill, right? If I mess up and I go negative negative, what do? I've just now turned my line into an increasing line or a positive slope. So be very mindful that if it's a negative slope, it is not a negative negative. Either your negative has to be that you drop and then you go positive 2, or I can, right? I can rise 2, but then when I rise 2, look what happens. When I go backwards 1, because that's my negative move, I end up on the same line. All right, now these two are in kind of wonky, and this one I really wanted to do as an example because I thought this one would be good. All right, let's see, Montana, what should I move first? Good, I want to get that y over on the left side. So when I do that, that gives me 3y equals, and then what's left over here is just that negative x. All right, Gabby, what's next? Well, if I subtract the 3y, that's just going to move it back over. Huh? Good. I've already got the y on the left where I want it, but I need to get it by itself. So I'm going to divide by 3. So that gives me y equals. Now, Gabby, I want you to tell me what to write next. Good. Good, good. Remember, you got to make that fraction. You got to remember that 1 is there by that x. So negative 1/3 x, right? Now, Corbin, what's my slope? No. Had you got, when you did, because I see you're working on number 10 right now. So if you're on 9, did you move everything like you were supposed to? Okay, so what's in that M spot?
Oh, the M, 1/3.
There, negative 1/3. Negative 1/3 is our slope. And Montana, what's our y-intercept? This is a trick one. If I need a plus b, what could I put there that wouldn't change the equation at all? 0. So my b is a 0. So where is 0 on the y-intercept? Yeah, right in the very middle. So my b, or my beginning point, is right in the middle. And then my m is negative 1/3. So that means I'm going to fall 1 and then go to the right 3. And since I have 2 points, I have plenty to connect and make my line. Good. All right, last one. This one is one that's just everything's all in a crazy spot. So we little by little got to get everything where we want it. So Gabby, what would my first move be? Okay, if I subtract 12 and I subtract 12, that gives me 4y plus 7x equals negative 12. All right, Corbin, what's next? Good. Subtract 7x and subtract 7x. And that leaves me with 4y. What order would I write everything in over there? Make sure you don't lose the negative. Negative 7x minus 12. All right, Montana, what would be next? Not yet. My y's not quite alone. What am I going to do? Yep, and make sure you do it to each one individually. So now I have y equals negative 7/4 x, and then negative 12 divided by positive 4 is a negative 3. Signs will get you here. You got to really slow down and watch your signs. All right, now, Montana, what's my m? Good. And Bryce, what's my b? Good, negative 3. And so since my b is my beginning point, I'm going to go to the y-intercept at negative 3, which is down here. Now, I want to show you guys something, okay? And this is why I bring this example up, okay? If I try to fall 7, right? It's negative 7/4. If I try to fall 7, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm off my graph. I can't fall 7. This is why I told you about the difference. Instead of 7/4, or negative 7/4, we can do 7 over negative 4. And then, Bryce, what were you going to tell me to do? Yes. So this is why you've got to know that you can move that negative to the bottom. Because I run out of graph. I can't fall 7. But I can rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then go backwards 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, real quick, what is the check to make sure that I rose and fell and moved left and right? What's the test to know I did it right? Who can tell me? How do I know that I went the right direction when I was rising and falling and moving? You could. What's another? It's just a real quick, it'll take you 2 seconds to glance at the graph and see. Yeah. If your slope is negative, which it is, right? Either way you write it, our slope is negative. If your slope is negative, if you did it right, you should be running downhill. If you did it wrong and you're running uphill, that's your, if I were you, and this is just a habit I got onto when I was in college and I was in college algebra having to graph stuff like this. If you will, when you're done, literally take 3 seconds to glance at your slope and say it's a negative slope, and then glance at your line and say, yep, I'm running downhill, you will catch probably 90% of your errors in graphing slope, if you will, or graphing lines, if you will literally take that split second at the end of every problem just to say, oh, positive slope, I'm running uphill, check. But if you see a positive slope, but you're running downhill, that'd be a red flag. Oh, wait a minute. I must have counted something off. Okay? All right. The packet I have for you, it's bigger, but I did it for 2 days so that I didn't assign a Khan Academy or an Ed Puzzle for our E-days. I kept it on paper pencil. So it's actually kind of 2 assignments in one. So it's a lot. It's a packet, but you have until Thursday to complete it. Okay? So for anybody at home, if you have any questions, of course, email me, hit click the load button on Cami, and make sure you show all of your work just like we've done here in all of these examples. And if you need me, email me.